what is to happen under a set of test conditions. Now, even if you do, as a tester, get adequate test oracles during your projects, there are two Agile principles that are going to make this challenge ongoing. The one is, that I mentioned before, this idea of embracing change, of welcoming changes even late. So this means that the oracle is not a solid thing; it is a fluid thing, which can evolve as the project goes along. And then again, this issue of advocating exchange of information through face-to-face conversations. Okay, that's fine, but we need to make sure that if the definition of correct behavior changes before or especially after the test execution has started, then the test team needs to remain engaged with that discussion, needs to be involved in that discussion. Otherwise, the tests will, of course, reflect outdated information about what the system is to do. Now, there's no test strategy to solve the problem. This is a change management challenge, and you need to have adequate change management in the process. Now, our estimates have been on projects that if you have serious test oracle problems, that will impose an inefficiency in 20, 25, 30% or so, both in terms of test development and test execution. And it also, that inefficiency is also imposed on the development team at large, because the test team is forced to adopt an attitude of, if in doubt, it's a bug. And therefore, the bug tracking and management process, whatever that is, as lightweight or heavyweight as it might be, becomes a retroactive requirement specification process. And the tests themselves, in essence, become retroactively defined requirement specifications. So, I think it's important to keep in mind that you're going to have an oracle. The only question is whether the oracle is going to exist before or after your tests are executed. In the case of insufficient information, then it'll be after, in the form of these test logs and test cases. Now, not only is this an efficiency issue, but it also is going to be a drain on your bug finding effectiveness. And we've started to see a pattern in organizations where there are oracle problems, test oracle problems, of a relatively lower defect detection effectiveness than in other organizations that don't have this. Now, I'm not ready to put some sort of statistical figure out there, but we certainly have seen a pattern, and I would expect that the DDP, or defect detection percentage, of a team that's suffering chronic oracle problems is going to be lower than the same team if it gets adequate information. And this is just because there are two kinds of mistakes you can make in interpreting test results: is the failure to report a bug when you should, or the reporting a bug when you shouldn't. And no matter how far you try to bias yourself towards reporting bugs when you shouldn't, the false positives, you'll inevitably end up reporting some number of, or not reporting some number of bugs that you should have. And of course, this situation, just as a whole, is one that becomes rather frustrating to the testers. It's you sort of feel like you're blindfolded and trying to hit the piñata with a stick. Okay, so the next testing challenge here is your screens update. Is a somewhat related one, a shifting test basis. Now, this is, the test basis is what the tests are based upon. And in many cases, we're used to, as test professionals, thinking of the test oracle and the test basis as the same thing. Of course, they're not quite. They don't necessarily have to be. So, for example, in risk-based testing, the quality risk items that you identify in your risk analysis are the test basis. Now, in a requirements-based testing strategy, you have to use, of course, a requirement specification as your test basis, and those are both the oracle and the basis in that case. So you're very much dependent on a good requirement specification in a requirements-based strategy. Now, not only is it the basis of the test, but it is also the basis of the any sort of coverage measurement and results reporting, test results reporting, at least in terms of any, what have we tested, to what extent have we tested. And if the test basis is constantly shifting, then you're going to have a problem. So requirements-based testing generally is going to break, while risk-based testing can deal with the shift in the test basis as it goes along. The risks change and their priority changes, and that results in a dynamic rebalancing of your testing and rebalancing of your test effort, and then a reporting of results in terms of the quality risk mitigation that's been achieved. And that's going to be more robust. Now, it's not, of course, perfect. You're still going to have to invest some effort in updating the risks, but it's easier than the follow the bouncing ball problem that you would have trying to do it with requirements, even assuming that you could get an adequately defined set of requirements out of an Agile team, at least adequately in terms of what the typical requirements-based testing strategy would require. Now, next challenge, as we watch your screens get updated here, meetings, large number of meetings. Now, again, not necessarily inherent, but there's a sort of a subtle bias in Agile towards this. So, as I mentioned before, the Agile methodology, the Agile Manifesto talks about valuing working software over comprehensive documentation. And that's certainly a valid thing to say, and it's producing long documents and then having to revise and revise and revise is often a very frustrating situation. But what we have seen with some of our clients is that this results in a lot of meetings, and this can then reduce the effectiveness and efficiency of the project team as a whole, and the testers and test manager can be senior testers anyway, and the test manager can be tied up in these meetings for sometimes a lengthy period of time during a day, which obviously doesn't come across as very agile, to put it that way. One of our clients now made a what I thought was a fairly funny comment about this, which is I said, I'm surprised at the name Agile. He said it should be called couch potato. And there are too many meetings, and it's ironic that there are all these books explaining how simple it is. Now, I think it's fair to say that in this particular situation, the client was still learning how to do Agile, so I think that they might have been, say, erring on the side of too much communication. And certainly excessive meetings can and do happen following any life cycle model. It's important, whatever life cycle model you're following, especially if it's Agile with its emphasis on talking over writing, that the right balance be struck between documentation and meetings. I think it's also important that people remember that when the Agile Manifesto says embrace change, it doesn't mean engage in analysis paralysis. In other words, you should be willing to make decisions in meetings and then stick by those decisions rather than constantly going back and revisiting things that had been decided before, because new issues will come up and you'll basically be stuck in quicksand if you're constantly going back and reconsidering decisions that have been previously made. Now, another